Dr. Randolph "Randy" Severson is a therapist and author whose writings comprise an effort toward a roots psychology, an effort to get to the root of the things that matter: soul, family, religion, culture, history, tradition, honor, ambition, and music, and to speak them in a manner true to his roots. Severson grew up in Oak Cliff, Dallas, with family roots deep in the languages, both biblical and blues, of East Texas and Mississippi. The touchstone for his work has always been James Hillman. Randy.
To begin with a quotation from Dr. Hillman. What happens to our hearts when we see them wounded or hurt? That's a turning point when the animal is hurt. In your mind's eye, dim the lights. Imagine a stage, half darkened, spare, stark, austere. Think of yourself as Greek. It's early morning, the shadows long, a chill in the air, the stars cold, remote as background. In the middle of the stage stands a man, professionally dressed, goatee perhaps, a pipe, hair and beard sprinkled with gray. You know before he opens his mouth he's a psychiatrist. See another figure, young, high cheekbones, aquiline nose, slender, eyes lit then unlit. His name is Alan Strang. And then see six figures, mysterious, their breath snorted, condensing in the chill. They wear a tall mask, archaic, totemic. They are horses. The play is Equus by Peter Schaefer. The story of the psychiatrist, Dr. Dysart, has been recruited to treat an institutionalized 17-year-old boy, Alan Strang, whose crime was perverse, incomprehensible. Dysart is having his own breakdown and crisis of self-doubt. He treats children and young men and helps them adjust and become more functional in the world. He has a dream of himself as a sort of priest in a marbled classical setting, eviscerating, gutting children. In his dream, he recoils from these ritual murders, but fears retaliation should he refuse. Sensing his ambivalence as other priests clutch and tear the knife away from his thin-fingered hands, he startles awake. Dysart attempts to treat Alan, and although treatment is slow, with Alan resisting at first by obsessively repeating commercial jingles, gradually Dysart learns the story. Alan's parents war about religion. His mother is a true believer who reads the Bible daily to Alan. His father, an angry atheist, or becomes one in reaction to the oppressiveness of his wife. The dad believes that Alan is too preoccupied with the violence and gore in the Bible. Bursting into his room, the dad snatches away a grotesque print of the crucifixion from the foot of Alan's bed. Alan replaces it with the head of a horse, with large, hypnotic, transfixing eyes. Like so many pubescent boys and girls, Alan becomes obsessed with horses. Riding with an unnamed stranger on the beach for the first time, he experiences the thrill of what? Sexual arousal, certainly, but power, nature, drive, rhythm, sand, sea, wind, sun. Encountering the horse and riders, Alan's father, with desperate ferocity and disgust, wrenches him from the saddle. The mysterious rider mocks them and rides on. Alan turns 17, goes to work, boy meets girl, flirtatious, a wild one, who coincidentally works at a stable where Alan obtains a job. Hypnotizing Alan, Dysart discovers that Alan is fixated on a horse, Nugget, Equus, and rides him naked on the beach at night, imagining himself as a kind of Homeric or biblical king, with him astride Equus, laying waste their enemies before them. And Dysart discovers as well the story of the crime. Girl meets boy, girl seduces boy, invites him for a romp in the sweet-smelling hayloft above the horses. Beneath the horses stir, they undress, but Alan, dazed by her nakedness, is impotent. He erupts with rage, he yells, he flees. Alan, still naked, descends and begs the horses for forgiveness. In Dysart's voice, the horses speak. Mine, you're mine, I'm yours, and you are mine. But then he thunders, thunder and lightning in the voice, the sea pounding. The Lord thy God is a jealous God. He sees you forever, Alan. He sees you. He sees you. The boy screams back, God seest. He screams, no more, Equus. And then in a maelstrom of emotion, with steel spikes, he blinds the 6 horses in the stable. Though there is a final scene with Dysart remaining full of self-doubt, recoiling from the world as it is, doubting the value of any therapy of adjustment, that's more or less it. An already skeletal plot reduced to bare bones. Equus was very much in vogue in the 70s. It would fit snugly in a time capsule from that era. The New York Times calls it the decade that nobody knows, the era of the Cambodian invasion, Watergate, Peter Brook and Jane Cotton, the theater, Paul Schofield's Lord of the Flies, like Lear typifies it, Coppola, Scorsese, Al Altman, the Patty Hearst kidnapping, Semites, Liberation Army, Jonestown, punk rock, and the Ramones. With Equus all compact. And the play, with its childhood sexuality and archetypal dream, its mythic resonance, its almost primal scream against monotheism, fundamentalism, the cruel abuses of psychiatry, and the adjustment psychologies of the time, was catnip to depth psychology and seemed to ratify all the basic premises. But for me, goodbye to all that, a road not taken. I start as James Hillman often did, with anger. And remember what he said, that's a turning point when the animal is hurt. That flare, then blaze of feeling that many of us feel when we see or hear about an animal being abused, hurt, starved, maimed, tortured. This play, so beloved by 70s Freudians and Jungians, entails horses screaming with their eyes gouged out. Horses screaming with their eyes gouged out. A scream that C.S. Lewis called one of the most terrible noises in the world. The silent scream of the horse in Picasso's Guernica, of Robert Jordan's horse, entrails shredded by shrapnel, and for whom the bell tolls, of the horse's dreadful cry in Matthew Arnold's great poem, Sohrab and Rustam, based on the Persian epic, a cry that Arnold compares to a dying lion's roar. Maybe a tender-minded pet lover, urbanite, suburbanite, sentimental self-indulgence. Norman Mailer said that's always Americans' failings, sentimentality and hypocrisy, or something echoing deeper. So much of our civilization, so much of the glory that was Greece, the grandeur that was Rome, the city on a hill that some believe America to be, is linked with the abuse of animals. From religious altars soaked and stained with sacrificial blood, to blood sports victimizing animals, from the slaughter of the buffalo. I think of Margot McLean's dreamscape of the buffalo, the mesmerizing and accusing beauty, beast not bride of quietness, but innocence unravished, to the abuse of carriage horses in 19th century London that gave rise to the SPCA, from our everyday indifference to terrified and starving strays, to the misuse of pets, to the extinction of entire species. Our name is Legion. The animal, perhaps, is civilization's first discontent. I'm going to ask a different question, a question that I think Dr. Hillman might have asked, maybe the later Hillman more than the 70s version. What about the animals? What about the horses? Why don't the horses fight back? Why don't they rear and snort and stampede this kid? He is, after all, an abuser. Forget his oh-so-psychoanalytical story, his puer vulnerability. He's an animal abuser. Perhaps he ought to go the way of Hippolytus on the beach, trampled by his own horses. Do you remember the lines? The horses, terrified, immediately panicked. They sunk their teeth into the fire-forged bit and carried him away. Seems to me just desserts. Equus may have been a movable feast for psychological interpretation, but it's also a police report about animal abuse. What if the horses had fought back? The horses Mars, pawing, stomping, teeth bared, lowering, leveling, snaking his head, arching his neck, rearing to strike, to hammer and trample. In many ways, Dr. Hillman was Mars, Martial, his natal chart by self-description. It was Florence, whose patron deity is Mars, that awarded him the President's Medal. He was always in the arena, in this respect, more like Kierkegaard and Nietzsche than Freud and Jung. Or conceivably more aptly put, just more Greek. The Greek of the agon, the battler, the battle. In the men's movement, he was sometimes known as the destroyer. Always, always the battle of ideas. We need Mars, great Ares like a war horse wheeled, ubiquitous as bounding strength, our helper in the field, said Sophocles. Or Buck, the horse whisperer, Robert Redford in the movie, telling the traumatized young girl about her injured stallion, both almost killed by a speeding 18-wheeler. He was trying to protect you, honey. He met the truck head on. We need Mars, and maybe more today than ever. We need Mars. We need the voice of Mars that Kenneth Tynan heard in the Young Olivier. Quote, when it becomes a roaring, valiant fanfare, when one's vision is of an unpent charge of black stallions, a legion on their arched and warlike backs. We need the stallion of Miki, the Banquo figure in Kurosawa's masterpiece, The Throne of Blood, whose rage and slashing hooves contest the horror of the time, as Shakespeare's Richard II expected his royal Barbary to do beneath the saddle of the usurper Bolingbroke. We need Mars, the horse of Mars, not portrait of the artist as a young man, but portrait as warrior. Not just literal warrior, but mental, moral, artistic. Life is a battle, said Seneca. St. Paul says, fight the good fight. The great Luther, whose portrait hung above the Hillman's mantelpiece, man is a horse, he said. I shall never cease from mental fight, said Blake. E. Cummings, I have to fight every day just to remain myself. Of Orson Welles, his biographer said, one senses something archaic about him. He behaves like some tribal chieftain, a warlord of art, riding roughshod over the niceties of conventional behavior. Think, too, of all those martial-made Shakespearean and cinematic heroines, cheered by Camille Paglia in her sexual personae. From the Amazon Penthesilea, Ares' daughter, and Camilla, ally of Turnus in the Aeneid, swift as the wind, who was suckled by a mare, to Joan of Arc, the English burned her horse before they burned her. In D.C., it's the only equestrian statue with a woman rider. Harriet Tubman, Angela Davis, Bernadette Dohrn. H.D. wrote, myself a tiger? This tiger might pounce, she said, and attack the frail old man across the room. The frail old man was Freud. Denis Levertov, with that lyric voice like a swan at daybreak or bell chimes at dusk, who over the Vietnam War detonated friendships, including the long-standing one with Robert Duncan, refused to give readings of her poetry because she thought it too ineffectual. The Times demanded action. Patricia Barry in the classic Echo Sottobody, slam poetry and a cross-country motorcycle ride, to all those firsts achieved by women but never without a fight. The return to Greece means reversion to the agon. In late antiquity, Greek literature's last and longest epic poem, the Dionysiaca, exalts even the bisexual Dionysus as a warrior and a conquering general. We need to ride that horse, this horse with its heroes that Hillman writes so stirringly about, the rhythms at full gallop, the thundering hooves, the muscled flanks, the headstrong force of a galloping Arab, ears laid back, necks stretched into wind, crusaders and conquistadors, Mongols and Huns, Muhammad's faithful, riding to convert the vast expanses of the Arabian world. But, as Hillman also reminds us, the horse exhibits gentler characteristics. Gentle certainly belongs to the equine idiom. Is he gentle? A child will ask before climbing into the saddle. Hillman again, the delicacy, the gentility, that's what we often miss. Remember the delicacy of a horse's lips, its lashes, its throats, its leg bones, the sweetness of the stable smell. In this he echoes the French prose poet Francis Ponge, who evokes the sensitive ears matched by flaring nostrils. Remember Dylan Thomas, in the first spinning place, the spellbound horses walking warm. Stop, said Jim Harrison. Stop a moment. Think about these horses and their sweet-smelling silence. Have you, Hillman asked, cared for a horse? Had its saliva on your hands? Watched its colic, felt its patience when being shod? Carried water on a January morning and heard its mouth suck it back? Have you ever had to put one down or dreamt of a hurt horse? Mars' horse is both fierce and gentle because the horse is not an aggressor, not a killer, not a predator. Out of the opacities of time, the horse steps forth as prey. In the presence of danger, a horse will nearly always bolt and flee. The horse will run away, flight, overtaking, fight, nearly every time. Like James Baldwin, Moses, Odysseus, like Martin Luther King, The horse is a reluctant warrior, like Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, perhaps. Like Aries with Cancer ascendant, we might say, born at 10:20 on April 12th. That is James Hillman. Like a leg move in dressage, the horse moving forward and scuttling sideways at the same time. We often imagine Mars as bloodthirsty, an aggressive predator, but Mars is also a protector. He is the protector of Rome, and more significantly, the protector of Florence. Not the eternal city as in Rome, but the eternal Renaissance city. Dante, Da Vinci, Boccaccio, the city where Hillman, in a milestone moment, was awarded, as I've said, the President's Medal of the Italian Republic. Consider the birth of Mars. The stories tell us that it was a virgin birth, Juno giving birth without conception. In Rome, she was known as Queen, goddess of fidelity. But she was a warrior, too, in her iconography, nearly always clad in warlike gear. She struggled with Mars' birth, her torturous labor full of pain and shrieking. It was Flora who served as midwife. Flora, an ancient goddess of Italy, goddess of flowers, welcomed into the Roman pantheon. Silver bracelets on her wrist and flowers in her hair, as Dylan once put it. At her festival, which fell in late April and early May, April showers bring May flowers. Men wore flowers, women forbidden garb, or both wore nothing at all. Concluding with a hunt for goats and hares, animals of fertility. A very D.H. Lawrence, Lady Chatterley's lover sort of thing. Lawrence, the poet of flowers, of birds, beasts, and flowers. So it is a protector, warrior, queen that gives birth to Mars, whose defining virtue is fidelity, and it is herbs, flowers, beauty, spring, the air and the goat that midwife him, that bring him forth as a force and power in the world, a baleful, numinous deity. So Mars and his war horses and stallions, defenders, protectors, defenders and protectors of the faith, a D.H. Lawrence kind of faith in flowers, or William Carlos Williams, of asphodel, that greeny flower. I come, my sweet, to sing to you. It is difficult to get the news from poems, yet men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. In poetry and beauty and the senses and the radiance and streaming streaks of colors that spill across the dawn. In the Iliad, after her wounding by Diomedes, the bright blood coursing down the morning glory skin, it is to Ares, whom Aphrodite flees as supplicant. And it is for the use of Ares' horses that she begs. And it is Ares' horses that sweep her into the protecting clouds of Olympus. And is this not a supreme metaphor for Hillman's work? A suffering Aphrodite, a soul of the world in misery and terror, swept up by the fiery steeds, the racing, swerving, soaring, dazzling, agonistic rhetoric of Mars. The horse, not the horse as a symbol of Mars, not the horse as Mars, the horse is Mars, in the flesh, the horse flesh, the grainy sweetness of the feedlot, stall, and pasture smell, nuzzling nose, pricked up ears, hiked up tail, snorting, ambling, cantering, trotting, galloping, gathering speed into a breakneck run, pulsing, pounding, animating, animalizing, crunching corn, the oil, creak, and leather smell of the saddle, the oomph of the uncinch, the weight of saddle and blanket in extended hands, the tug of the loop-back rope on the saddle horn as you hoist and hang it from the ceiling, the slick, ticklish, sweat-tip prickliness of the rub-down, the upward sweep of the arm releasing the bridle, the unlatch and swing of the stall door opening, the sunlight flooding in, the swirl and glints of the hay dust, sensitizing, sensualizing, bringing down to earth our imaginations. What does the stallion protect? The herd, of course. All Mars animals are protectors. The dog, the wolf, the cock, are protectors of the herd, their territory, the pack, the brood. May I say it simply? In protecting their own, their kind, the herd stands for whole, a synecdoche. For protecting other animals, all those who walked in paradise crowded on the ark, peer orb-eyed from the woods, scratch at the back doors of our dreams. From our predations and cruelties, the abuses of humankind, vermin, varmints, traps, helicopter hunting, strychnine, extermination, slaughterhouses, puppy mills, factory farms, torture, abandonment, animal control, the antiseptic, urine smell, cold, clattering, barking, whining, yelping, sterile echoing metal clang of city dog pounds. Abandon hope, all ye who enter there. So protector and defender of anima, of Aphrodite, of beauty, and the world so, and with the artist Margot McLean, protector and defender of dream animals and spirits in their natural habitat. In the world, in the freshness of the morning, condensations of the radiance of light, exhalations of the world so, sunrise, bird song, beams of gold tunneling through the trees, a woodpecker hammering, Walden Faulkner's big woods, John Borman's emerald forest, Robert Bly's Minnesota mornings, any shoreline on a cloudless day. As he says in the preface of Animal Presences, indeed it has been a steady line, an actual dominating narrative to my subversive service to psychology. It is what this present volume elucidates, the preservation of, even obeisance to the animal spirits. A whistle, and a horse breaks from the tree line. For those of us for whom James Hillman's genius, his ferocity and gentleness, is a kind of fire horn, like the Blackfeet and Sioux and the old-time cowboys carried, it is this horse, this martial horse, that we must ride in service, in defense of the animals, of beauty, making those equestrian leaps of imagination that Garcia Lorca lauded, ride in defense of beauty, giving beauty, as Hopkins cried, giving beauty, 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 back to God's, back to God, to God's creation, to the animals. The analyst listens, the shaman speaks, said Levi-Strauss. Bring me my feathers and amber, said Gary Snyder. From Equus, where we started, to the mouth of the cave then, as at Lascaux, with 300 horses in red ochre, silent now, not screaming, flickering in the half-light as they recede into the wall. Let us speak with oracular frenzy. Let us speak and speak out as James Hillman did. Speak and dream, a dream of the anima mundi, of a world soul, of animal rights, and of 4 blue horses, red wheelbarrow environmentalism, lake poet, blue rider, Dharma bum, silent spring, goodbye to a river, big yellow taxi, John Muir, Ansel Adams, Ack McCaslin in a boat, with outstretched hand guiding the horses in the rain-filled light, weightless as they swim across the river. Dream with Hillman. Have you ever cared for a horse? Mary Oliver. If being beautiful isn't enough, what could they possibly say? Rising, rising, rising now with Aphrodite. James Dickey overlooking a pasture at dusk. Now they are feeding on solid cloud. And with all the pretty horses, Cormac McCarthy too. That night he dreamt of horses in a field on a high plain where the spring rains had brought up the grass and the wildflowers out of the ground. And the flowers ran all blue and yellow far as the eye could see. And in the dream he was among the horses running, and in the dream he himself could run with the horses. And they coursed the young mares and fillies over the plain where their rich bay and their rich chestnut colors shone in the sun. And the young colts ran with their dams and trampled down the flowers in a haze of pollen that hung in the sun like powdered gold. And they ran, he and the horses, out along the high mesas where the ground resounded under their running hooves, and they flowed and changed and ran, and their manes and tails blew off them like spume. And there was nothing else at all in that high world. And they moved, all of them, in a resonance that was like music among them. And they were none of them afraid, neither horse, nor colt, nor mare. And they ran in that resonance, which is the world itself, and which cannot be spoken, but only praised. Thank you.